You can't what?
Oh, we're live. Sorry. I hit the going live button.
Oh, did you? All right, we're live.
So hello. This is Warren Redlick. I am here with Bear's Workshop. I actually don't know your name. I should have asked you that before we started. What's your name?
My actual name is Barry, and
Okay, Barry.
it just
Good enough.
translates into bear.
Cool. So Barry, Bear's Workshop does flyovers of Lucid Motors and Nikola Motors factory sites. Both of them are doing some construction, so they've been doing some flyovers. Recently, I caught notice of Bear's Workshop because they received a cease and desist letter from Lucid Motors because Lucid didn't want them doing drone flyovers of their property, which is, I found a little bit odd. For those who know, I'm a Lucid Motors skeptic. I don't know what Barry's view is on Lucid Motors, but I was just curious to hear more about his experience dealing with Lucid Motors, and then to talk about Lucid as well as talk about Nikola Motors because he's been doing flyovers of their factories as well. Barry, would you tell us, for starters, a little bit about yourself and how you got interested or how you got started in doing flyovers of Lucid and Nikola?
We got interested late last year, and really it was generated from the Tesla guys, flying over Jeff and Randy and all the other guys flying over the Giga Texas factory, and we're like, that seems like fun. Me and my son, we've done a little bit of drone flying for our YouTube channel, which was at that time mainly focused on like repairing things in our workshop and things like that. So we were interested in drones, and then we see this, and we talked about it. We said, hey, Nikola's broken ground, but there's not much going on there. So you think maybe we start flying over there and document the progress. There's got to be someone that's interested, despite Nikola's problems that they've had in the past. We knew that there was construction, so we bought a drone, played with it, practiced, made sure we knew how to fly, got our licenses, both of us, and we went down there and we just started filming, and we haven't stopped since. We've gone every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday since January 14th. So we're on our 61st flyover, and we also knew that Lucid was breaking ground. And we're like, well, hey, we need to check that out. We went by there in March. We did just a quick little flyover to see what it was looking like. This was before they were doing any type of construction. They had finished their first phase. So we were waiting for word that they broke ground, and which was a couple of weeks ago. So we started going over there. And from the start, we had issues with security coming out, telling us different things and different conversations. We documented all that on our videos that we put out, describing our interactions with the security there. The police were called the first time we were there. The police told them flat out they can fly if they want, and they asked us, hey, could you just not fly over today, and we'll have someone from legal call you, and then you guys can work something out. Sounds good to me. We'll meet you there, and we won't fly today. We hadn't flown yet but they had called the police. So from there, it's been kind of downhill for the most part. Every time we've gone out there, security has met us. They've all been friendly. No, I will say this: every person we've met has been friendly, except for one visit. That guy didn't want to talk to us. He just wanted to park in front of us and stare at us. So we got the cease and desist letter last week, and we put the video out about it. Wanted to hear everyone's input. Wanted to hear what people thought. Should we keep flying? What other things should we do? The cease and desist is pretty specific. The laws that they cite in there really don't apply to us. At least we don't feel that they do. But it specifically said that we're not allowed to fly over their property. So we did go out yesterday, and we did a perimeter flyover. We didn't fly over anything of theirs, and we went around the west side, the south side, the east side. There's really not much to see right now. They're grading, so it's not an exciting view. So we didn't have any issue with that. Security actually did not come out and meet us for the first time, but we did get in touch with someone from Lucid yesterday. They gave us a phone call, and now we are trying to find some middle ground. So we're going to go from there. We're hoping to hear back from them within the within the week.
Okay.
And go ahead.
No, so before we dive more into that topic, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about Bear's Workshop. What is
Okay.
Bear's Workshop?
Well, we started off doing, like I said, doing repairs on tools. I've got a landscaping company also, so we had a lot of material. Things need to be repaired, and then we'd repair something, and then we do a video of it documenting how we repaired it and put it up there. But as time progressed, last year, my wife got a Model 3, so I started getting into more of the EV type of videos. Going to show how to put a charging station in your garage. So we're trying to, the focus of the channel is changing more towards EV stuff and alternative energy. I think that's more exciting. I think there's a lot more things to do, and I think it's the future. So it makes sense for us to go in that direction. After she got her Model 3, I had to sell my car. I had to go get a Model Y, which I got back in March. So I'm a Tesla fanboy, but I'm not a hater of others. I like to think that everyone should have a chance. Let's see what they can do. I know there's definitely issues with Nikola that were in the past, and I think they're trying very hard to put it in the past and move forward. Lucid, there's a lot of things out there. I've watched a bunch of your videos. I've watched your videos before you reached out to me. So I've got an interest in that stuff. So we try to stay neutral on the channel. We don't want to sit here and bash anyone. There's a lot of conjecture out on the internet, and a lot of times people make up things. You hear things about false mergers all the time. There was an article a month ago, Nikola and Tesla should merge, which is ridiculous. Then people are putting videos out on it. We just want to try and give as much as we can a straightforward, this is what we see, this is what we know to be the facts. And if people want to hate on the page because of Nikola, we generally just ignore them, or we just tell them thanks for watching, see you next time, because they're going to come back. So okay. They're repeat offender haters.
Okay, and for those who are interested, I've watched a few of your videos. There's a link to the channel for Bear's Workshop in the description of the video below. So look in the video below for that.
Yes, please do.
And while I'm mentioning that, this channel survives in part on Patreon support. So please look in the description for our link to Patreon. Does Bear's Workshop have a Patreon?
Yes, we do. And if you go to any one of our videos, the link is going to be in the description. You'll see it right at the top. And we would appreciate any support that we can get.
And I would just say, I think you're performing a public service. I think that for people to be able to see what's happening at these factory sites is really important. And that's the kind of thing that it's a valuable service that not a lot of people do. I watch a lot of channels covering Starbase, whatever's happening at Starbase. And there's a lot of people putting a lot of work into letting us see what's happening there. And I think it's a great thing. So I think you started with Nikola Motors first, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to guess that your actual location is somewhere near those two factory sites.
Yeah, we're about 50 miles from Nikola. Gas is free because we got the Teslas. And then we can swing over about 20 miles and then in another direction, which is almost on our way back. And then we can stop at Lucid. So it's something that we've been pretty regular about. We haven't missed a day yet.
Okay,
so it's within range.
So when people at Nikola or Lucid hear you're coming, they say the competition is coming, and then a Tesla drives up.
Yeah.
The competition is coming.
There was a guy who used to fly over Nikola, and he wasn't doing very good videos. And he took a picture of us actually recording and posted on his page. Oh my God, there's a Tesla sitting out there, and people responding back to him. Yeah, that's the other guy that flies there, and he had no idea.
Okay, so there's a comment in the chat from MK10PW1000. There's no link to Bear's Workshop in the description. I just checked it. There's a link there. I don't know what you're looking at, but I just checked it myself. It's there.
He may need to refresh the page because
you might need to what he said. Hit the refresh button on your browser, and you'll see it. Because I didn't have it. If you logged into the chat before we started the video, we were talking about it, and I added the link to the description while we were talking, while the chat was already going. So I wanted to ask you, I want to talk mostly about Lucid Motors because I'm more interested in Lucid Motors. Lucid Motors to me is pitched itself to some extent as a Tesla killer. I think Nikola Motors is more like semi. They have some other projects that they were working on, but they were more focusing on something different. Lucid Motors was pretty clearly trying to make something comparable to the Model S with the Lucid Air. So what are your thoughts about Lucid Motors and the Lucid Air?
As far as the car goes, I think they're gorgeous. I mean, that is someone's opinion, and people are going to think it's uglier than sin, and some people are going to love them. I think they're gorgeous. I like the styling. If it was in my budget, yeah, I might be looking at a car like that. If it was in my budget, I might be looking at a Model S. But that's something that, you know, it's maybe down the road. If I see the car, I see the price, and it's a little scary though. I like bells and whistles. The price point of the high-end car is astronomical. And I've heard what you've said about the sales and how do you get that much market share to like put out 20,000 of these cars, and most of them are going to end up being the $70,000 version, not the, what is it, 140,000 or more. You know, it's not a big market that you're trying to get into, and to put that out, I see it as being a little bit difficult. So I have areas concerned for that. But I think the product that they're going to put out, which, you know, as an investor, I'm saying hopefully, which I shouldn't have to as an investor, but I think they will get a product out. But I think the cars look great.
Okay.
How they drive, I know, you know, who's driven them. So we'll just have to wait to see how that goes.
So let's just disclosure here. I own stock in Tesla. I do not own stock in CCIV. I have not, although some people think so, I have not shorted. CCIV is the stock ticker for the company that is merging with Lucid Motors. I have not, I did look at shorting CCIV or buying puts on CCIV, but I did not actually do it. So I have no financial interest in CCIV or Nikola. Do you have stock in Tesla, Nikola, or Lucid Motors?
All three of them.
Okay. And
All
then
three of
to be
them.
clear, with Lucid Motors, you would have stock in CCIV rather than in Lucid
Yes.
Motors because there is no stock in Lucid Motors yet.
Yes.
Okay. So you're basically optimistic that these companies will achieve something.
Yeah, I am. Lucid Motors, just from the outside, you know, they've got a beautiful facility. It's like the anti-Fremont facility, though. When you look at Fremont, there's stuff everywhere, and that's one of the few things that about Tesla that made me nervous when I was buying my Model Y. I'm watching these flyovers, and part of it looked like a junkyard. You know, I was like, okay, so my car's coming out of there. Don't scratch it on the way out. Lucid Motors, very clean on the outside. I don't know what it looks like on the inside. Very few people do. Maybe one day I'll get an invite. You know, you never know. We can work things out with Lucid. So
Okay. So and one quick thing, you said most of the vehicles they'll sell will be the $70,000 model. One of my criticisms of Lucid Motors is if you look at the slide deck they presented for investors when they announced the CCIV merger, the average selling price for the first 3 or 4 years was $100,000. So while I agree with you that there is a lot more demand for their $70,000 or $80,000 vehicle, the way they're pitching it to investors is they're selling $100,000 vehicles. I think it's actually the first 2 years. I think it's actually $110,000.
well, one way to look at that is that they're going to be selling the more expensive ones first.
Yeah.
And so you would expect to have a higher sales price or average price if you're selling the more expensive ones first. Granted, they've got to have the orders for them.
Right, but to sell 20,000 Lucid Airs, which I think the average selling price for 2022 for the 20,000 vehicle, that's not the precise number, by the way. I don't have the slide deck in front of me, but I think the average selling price in year 2022 was more than $100,000. So, because I could understand, we're going to sell 500 of the high end one,
Yeah,
and we're going to sell 19,500 of the low end one. Okay, I could buy that. But then your average selling price wouldn't be $110,000. Your average selling price would be $82,000, something like that.
maybe the Saudis put in a big order.
That's right. That's right. Well,
They put a letter of intent.
yeah. So, okay. So I'm curious about, you've done these flyovers, and look, it's very clear that Lucid has built a building. or two buildings, right?
Yes.
Can you describe the Lucid site? Because I see two buildings, and I think they're clearing land for a third building. What is going on the Lucid site right now? What's there, and what are they building or planning to build?
Okay, they've got there are two buildings. One I think is General Assembly. It's called AMP1, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not fully versed in what is going on in both of the two buildings. So I think one is General Assembly and one might be a paint shop.
I think that's correct, by the way.
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
Yeah. The cameras don't really give them justice as far as the size of the buildings. The buildings are very large. And the next phase is going to be 2.6 million square foot. So the next section is going to be quite large, and they're going to have more general assembly, more paint, everything that you need to build a car, because that's where they want to do the Project Gravity. And you know,
just be clear with what you're saying. There's two buildings that are already built, and you've been doing flyovers of a large piece of land that's basically dirt right now, that they're preparing to build a third building, which will build supposedly going to build their SUV for 2023. The SUV would debut in 2023.
I wouldn't call it a third building. I would call it probably a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Plus, they're doing some more. They're going to be expanding out the General Assembly building on the north side, which will be connecting to the existing building that's there.
Okay.
So they're expanding that which would be for ramping up the Lucid Air, because that's where the Lucid Air is built. Now you've got the Project Gravity is going to be built in the other one, and that part looks to be a lot bigger than what's already there. So I'm sure that there could be more of the manufacturing process for expanding out the Lucid Air could go into that building. But this section is quite big, and it's going to extend from where that building is all the way south to the end of the property.
And when I look at your videos, it doesn't seem like a lot's happening, but you understand what's happening better than I do. So it just looks to me like there's a lot of dirt and nothing happening, but they've actually done something with the dirt.
Yeah. It does take a while to get the grading process correct. Foundation is, of course, the most important thing of a building. You don't want anything to happen in the future. So they have to grade it. Right now they're saturating different areas with water. I think that helps compact the ground underneath to make it firmer. But that's a typical thing that we do. Our last video was only 5 minutes. There wasn't much to see, and we're doing a perimeter circle. So it wasn't all that exciting. And we're hoping in the coming weeks, once they get areas graded properly, that we're going to start seeing foundations and things like that start to go in, or footings, I should say, footings.
And there was a particular rectangle I noticed that was very wet. It was yesterday's video.
Yes.
So, all right, I want to be clear. So, for a matter of personal pride, I want to be right. That Lucid I have called Lucid a fraud. So I guess for a matter of personal pride, I would feel correct if I was proven right and Lucid ended up being a fraud. However, I like to think of myself as having a positive hopes for humanity. And when this started back in September, when they had the reveal, I was very optimistic and hopeful that there was going to be another EV company that was going to make vehicles that were going to help get rid of internal combustion engine vehicles and make the world a cleaner and better place. So although there's the selfish pride view that I want them to fail, I do have a significant part of me that wants them to succeed. I would love it if they delivered electric vehicles with 500 miles of range, even if they're expensive, because to me, they don't really compete with Tesla too much. They're especially the higher end. They're competing with high-end Mercedes and maybe Bentleys and Rolls Royces or whatever. They're nearly $200,000 vehicles.
I agree with you 100%. I don't think they're going to be taking away Tesla market share. There may be some people who want something that's a little bit more luxurious, that's more Mercedes-like, and the Lucid Air would be that. I don't think it's going to be a large chunk. I don't think Tesla is going to have any problem selling every car that they make in the Model S, the Model 3, Y, Cybertruck. I think that's not going to be an issue. So it's going to be hard to see how much they would actually have taken from Tesla, because Tesla is going to keep growing. And
just to be a little more clear, as a Tesla, people have accused me of rooting against Lucid because I'm a Tesla fan, but you're a Tesla fan and you're a Lucid fan. And as a Tesla shareholder and fan, I don't really find Lucid to be a threat. Tesla's bread and butter. Anybody who looks at my models, Tesla's bread and butter is the Model 3 and the Model Y. If Tesla doesn't sell another Model S or X ever, I don't think that has a significant, that doesn't really affect my models much at all. Tesla still goes to the moon.
I agree with that. Yes.
And there's, no visible plan from Lucid to compete with the Model 3 and Model Y until 2027 at best, by which point Tesla will really be on the 2023 compact, whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
And, there's no plan on the horizon for Lucid to compete with that. So I don't think that they're competitors from a shareholder perspective or, anything like that. I made a judgment in September, something looks fishy here. And in my mind, I keep seeing things that reaffirm that, but I wanted to bring on somebody who has a positive view, and you have a positive view about Lucid. So let's talk about what you think is coming for Lucid Motors in this factory site in the next months. So they've graded the land, or they're grading the land. They've used some water to wet parts of the land. At some point, what's next? They pour concrete?
They're going to dig out footings or start utility work. You've got to get the ground level just to know where your footings go. What we're seeing is just normal grading work in Arizona. This is how it always starts off, lots of water. And just get that part right. So we'll have footings, we'll have utility work to start doing trenches all over the place.
Utility work means pipes for water and trenches for and something for electricity, maybe?
Yes. It's not just water for you to drink. You need a lot of water to produce cars. For all the equipment, whether it's cooling, you need it for fire suppression. You might need it for furnaces. There's all sorts of things that you need. I don't know how much you watch like the Giga Texas channels, or you watch them building those or not, but there's just so much that goes on beneath it. And those guys do a good job of explaining it. Nikola, the same thing. We see when we think we're done, we're suddenly seeing a new trench being put in, and they're extending out the utility work even more. Their goal on that was to get all their utility work for all phases of their plant, which goes for another couple of years, get all that utility work done so that they don't have to come back and start digging things up. So, okay. Go ahead.
So I see a contrast between, actually, you kind of brought it up originally with the fact that Tesla Fremont is messy.
Yeah.
I see some significant contrast between, let's say, Giga Texas construction activity and Lucid construction activity. It seems to me like Tesla's going all out gangbusters to get this thing built.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you saw my tweet earlier today. I looked at your video and I tweeted an image from your video of Lucid's the two main buildings that exist now, that the parking lot was basically empty. Now it was Sunday. But I had one of my criticisms of Lucid Motors is, when you look at their slide deck, they have this page with a picture, or I think it's two pages basically, of like 19 people wearing suits, which to me looks like a top heavy company. And I have bought into the Silicon Valley startup concept for a long time, that you start up lean, and you work, you're burning the candles at both ends. You're working 100 hours a week. And then to see the parking lot empty on a Sunday, and not, I understand they're doing something in terms of grading land and they're making some progress, but when you compare how fast Tesla built Giga Shanghai and how fast they're working to build Giga Berlin and Giga Texas, it seems like Lucid does not have the same pace. I mean, they did get the two buildings up, right? Mm-hmm. Their two buildings are up.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear about something. I've criticized the parking lot for being empty on a Sunday. From what I've seen, there's activity in the parking lots for the two main buildings on the weekdays. They're full.
Yes.
There are people working there. It's not empty.
Yes. We've seen the parking lot full when we've been there during the week. Right now, we're keeping our flyovers to Sunday because we're trying not to get in anybody's way. So, but when we have been there during the week, the parking lot has got a lot of cars in it. There are people actually doing something. It would be a big area of concern for us if we showed up on a Tuesday or a Thursday and the parking lot was empty. Right. That would be, that'd be something that we would have to point out.
Yeah. No,
And
and I want to be, I think that goes in Lucid's favor, that people are showing up to work on the weekdays.
Mhm.
I'm a little critical that doesn't seem like many people are there on a Sunday. It's not like it was Memorial Day weekend. It was the next weekend. But at the same time, so I view Lucid Motors as a potential Theranos. And Theranos had people showing up to work. And most of the people who worked there didn't know that it was a fraud. And the same thing with Enron. Enron was a monster company, very, very large, lots of people. And it turned out there were some financial shenanigans up top that made the whole thing a fraud, but most employees didn't know. The employees at Enron got burned worse than anybody.
Yeah.
I think probably the employees of Theranos got burned worse than anybody. Not, on top of the fact that you probably lost a lot of your investment in the company. You probably lost all your investment in the company, which was a big part of your assets. But now your resume has this fraud on it, and it's probably hard to get a job after. So what are you seeing? Let me turn to one of my other criticisms of. I got two other criticisms of Lucid Motors that I can off the top of my head. One is no one seems to have driven the car other than people inside Lucid Motors. That was Jay Leno. I don't know if you caught my video about that. I did a really quick video about that. Jay Leno called into a radio show after driving the Model S Plaid on a drag strip. And the radio host asked him what he thinks of Lucid Motors. And Jay said, well, has anyone driven it yet? And, Marcus Brownlee drove the EQS. Jay Leno drove the Cybertruck. Rivian has had people drive its pickups. Have you heard of anyone outside of Lucid driving the car? And what are your thoughts on that?
I have not heard of anyone else driving the car, but I'm not in a position where I would probably hear about that. I just don't know people who would have been exposed to it to be able to drive it. But I have heard your criticism before about no one driving it. And I think it is important that they let some good reporters, auto reporters, take a drive for it and see what it feels like, even if it's not perfect. We could still consider this a prototype, just like Jay Leno and the Cybertruck. And there will always be people that will say, well, this wasn't right or that wasn't right, like you picking on floor space on the higher end model because the battery pack's larger. I mean, there's always something, no matter how perfect something is going to be, that someone could say something about. So I think they should let somebody with experience in doing reporting on cars drive the car. It's I'm not going to say it's fishy. I get the feeling that Lucid wants to keep everything real close to them right now. Nikola is the same way. They don't share a lot of stuff. Nikola has a good reason to, because of their previous scandals. So they just want to work on the truck. Why Lucid doesn't show more? I think they've got a really good handle on their social marketing to make everything look great. And I think you've commented on that before. I think they really sell it. But you are correct when you say that you got to sell it in more than just this perfect marketing piece. As you need to sell it to the people and let people drive it. So I would like to see that. But who am I? I'm the guy that's harassing them with drones. So
I find it funny that they're bothering you. Like when you were flying over, like the one where one of the videos where the guy comes over, like there was no one there. Like they're expressing concerns about safety. And like, first of all, it's a drone. People have flown drones before. They're flying over Fremont. They're flying over Texas. They're flying over Berlin. There isn't really a safety issue. So to me, this feeds my theory that they're hiding something.
I can see how you could think that, and I can't disagree with you. I know that they're telling me through the cease and desist and through the person that I spoke to that their main concern is safety. We are extremely safety oriented, and that is something that we're working through, and that's where we want to work through, and we're going to find some middle ground. The person I talked to believes that we can find a middle ground and that they will let us fly. They talked about possibly not when people are there, but the cease and desist also mentioned a Sunday when there was nobody there. So maybe that's an issue of safety. Maybe it's the intellectual property, or maybe you can go with your theory and that it's Theranos.
Okay, so then the other thing that bothers me about them, I started with no one's driven the car. The other thing that bothered me about them was they've shown videos from inside the factory. This has happened 2 or 3 times now, but they've always been videos produced by Lucid Motors. They haven't let anyone inside the factory. And I've talked to a couple people who, like, I talked to people who believe in Lucid. And, you know, like Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci and I talked about Lucid Motors in a long live stream. I think that was on his channel. Maybe it was on my channel. I don't remember. I think it was on his channel. And I feel like, so Ricky told me that he expected to be able to go inside the factory. And as far as I know, he hasn't been inside the factory yet. And at least I think there's one other person who said they were expecting to get to see inside the factory. So my whole theory on this is an elaborate fraud. Right now, once the CCIV merger goes through, they get another $4 billion. And I almost wonder if they're waiting, if they don't want you to fly over until they get their $4 billion. And once they have their $4 billion, they're going to be a little less worried because they got the $4 billion to spend. And maybe they can't really do a lot on the factory site yet until they get the $4 billion cash infusion. Does that seem like a reasonable theory about, like, once they get the $4 billion, they can go full steam ahead?
There's a lot of conjecture in there. It is possible. I couldn't say that that's not going to happen. You would think that if there was someone in that factory who works there and they know that there's nothing there, that somebody would come out and say something, because they know that something's going to happen at some point where they're going to lose their job. Is there a mad rush of employees leaving? And if there are, where are they going, and why aren't any of them talking? Is it because of an NDA? But if there's something going on illegal, an NDA is not going to cover that. I would assume. You're a lawyer, right? If NDA...
you're right. If there's 1,000 people working there or 500 people working there, somebody's going to leak something.
Yeah.
No matter what NDA you have, somebody's going to say something. I have never heard from a Lucid employee, hey, this thing's a fraud. Actually, I've heard from people, I can't tell whether somebody actually is a Lucid employee, but I have heard from people who claim to be Lucid employees that it's real. I went to the Lucid store in West Palm Beach. You know, they have a storefront, you know, and they're Tesla fans, and they believe, right? So it's but that's the Enron Theranos thing, that you can, and if it's an elaborate fraud, you've got to get the employees in on it. And look, it's pretty clear to me they have a team that's working on prototypes. I don't know to what extent they've really developed a production line, and it could be that they have a couple hundred people working on prototypes, and they got a couple hundred people who are in, like, marketing and finance, who are located in the building and have no idea what's going on, right? You know,
well, yeah.
And there's something, if you have $1 billion on hand left to fund the company, then you keep paying people to come in and you keep having them do work, and they don't have to know that the car doesn't work, that because it's, you know, for like the radio host, his name is Spike Ferenston, who talked to Jay Leno. He said, well, I rode in the car, and Jay said, well, how was it? He says, well, it was fast, but it was a little rough. It was a prototype. And in one of Peter Rawlinson's videos, he's driving on, I think it's Skyline Boulevard. I don't know if you know Skyline Boulevard, and you go, if you're near Stanford University in Silicon Valley, you go up the hill, and there's this road that runs from San Francisco to Santa Cruz, roughly. I'm oversimplifying, but it's known as Skyline Boulevard. And I could tell because I went to Stanford for a few years, I could tell he was on Skyline Boulevard. And there was this moment where you could tell the suspension didn't handle something well, and they cut away not quick enough. But, you know, well, let's talk about this, because you're familiar with EVs. The claim is that they're going to deliver a vehicle that's fast, like 0 to 60 in, I don't know, 2.5 seconds or something like that. I forget what the number is. That's as luxurious or more luxurious than a Mercedes S-Class, and that has over 500 miles of range. You know, it's comparable in performance to a Porsche Taycan, comparable in luxury to a Mercedes S-Class, and more range than any Tesla. That would be a pretty good engineering feat.
Yeah, I understand there's certain physics that go along with that, and whether or not you can do it. And maybe you can't right now with our technology, and maybe that is why the Plaid Plus got canceled yesterday. Maybe, you know, and that would make you right.
Yeah.
The technology is just not there. I hope it is. I want to see it. I'm rooting for all the EV makers to do something. There's competition is what is going to improve the EV market. It's going to increase the range. If we, Elon Musk is probably a separate case because he's competing against himself and he wants to make something better than he already made. But you still need to have competition out there, whether it's a Nikola semi truck, whether it's a Lucid Air, because without these EVs, look where we'd be right now. We'd be stuck with ICE vehicles, and they have not been progressing in decades. They're putting out the same old thing every time they make a mechanical improvement to make an engine better. The EPA puts more restrictions on it, and you got to have more emissions. So they keep canceling these things out. If you took all the emissions off of a car right now, who knows what they'd get for gas mileage? Besides, emission equipment destroys engines and costs money just to repair. And now we're getting away from that. This is a whole new level of a vehicle, and it's such a giant step forward. And I don't mean just the Lucid Air. I mean all EVs, except for maybe the Bolt. That's just kind of a weird looking car, Yeah. But we have to go there, and we have to have competition. And I've got to root for everybody. And there's not another EV that we're looking at possibly doing something with is Electrica Mechanica.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That's the little one.
It's a strange looking one.
No, I like that car. I like that.
Yeah, the single seat 3-wheeler. They're actually building it at a factory about 5 miles from my house. So that's something we can go look at, and we may be looking at that in the future. And I'm going to encourage them, even though I probably wouldn't even fit into it.
Well, let's talk about that really quickly. How does that compare to the Arcimoto FUV? Because they're both 3-wheel small vehicles.
The Arcimoto looks like it's open, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, this is enclosed. It has air conditioning.
I think there's a version of the Arcimoto that's enclosed. I'm not sure if it has air. The Arcimoto is a little bit more like a golf cart.
Yeah, it seems to be that. But the Electromechanica, the front end on it looks like a car from the 90s. And, they got to do something about that styling. But I'm trying to see if I can get a ride on one of those, because from connections that I may have. But in the site, we can't do flyovers on because it's right next to an airport. So we would have to get FAA approval just to do a small flight over there.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
No.
So somebody asked about this, and I was thinking about turning this way. We've talked about Lucid a bit. I want to come back to Lucid in a minute, but Nikola Motors. A lot of Tesla fans think Lucid Nikola Motors is a total fraud. I never dove deep. Like I dove deep on Lucid. I never really dove deep on Nikola. I just saw everybody laughing about it. I was never going to invest in it. I never got it. But you seem to think there's something there. So, there was like a meltdown.
Yes.
And now there's so what's the positive story that you see in Nikola now? And I'm not a Nikola skeptic. I literally have no idea.
If you were, I wouldn't blame you. There was a lot of things that went on with Trevor Milton, and basically he thought he could talk like Elon Musk, and Elon Musk seems to get away with a lot more, promising and not being able to deliver.
Elon time.
Yeah. But Trevor Milton had fantasies of making all these different vehicles, and now Nikola is only concentrating on 2 vehicles, and they've narrowed their scope, and they've got laser focus on what needs to be done, and which is just produce some vehicles. Trevor Milton was talking about jet skis and side by sides and pickup trucks, and they weren't there yet. They've got to build what they have first, and I don't think hydrogen belongs in a jet ski, or it doesn't belong in a truck. It belongs in a semi truck. It's for me. I think it works in long hauling, and they're doing a battery electric vehicle that they're going to put in like shipping docks and things like that. And I think that's good for an electric truck in like a dock situation, like in the Los Angeles port. That's a perfect place for electric truck, whether it's a Tesla truck or a Nikola truck. But just being able to move cargo around before it's shipped off to its next destination, great place for it.
So what are the vehicles that you see Nikola? What's the first vehicle that you think Nikola is going to produce?
Oh, it's going to be their semi truck. That's a battery electric vehicle.
Okay, and it's not hydrogen, it's battery electric.
It's not hydrogen. They are still working out the hydrogen details and trying to make it work. And I can't say I know much about how they're going to do this because there is an infrastructure issue. And I know that they want to sell hydrogen. I don't know if those plans are going to shift and they're going to change. I think that there's other ways to get hydrogen to people, like a mini hydrogen generating station.
Yeah. Did you see Sandy Monroe was talking about something like where you create a disk made of solid hydrogen, and somehow that's a way of storing hydrogen, and then there's some Sandy Monroe, who I value highly as a reliable source.
Yes, praise Sandy Monroe. I'm on board with that.
He just talked about some concept where there's like a disk of solid, which I don't understand it. I'm not saying I understand the concept, so maybe I'm totally getting it wrong. But it was like you condense hydrogen into a solid disk, and then you use that's an efficient way of storing the hydrogen, and then somehow you pick the hydrogen off the disk to fuel it. So I think there's potential there. But let's talk about the battery electric truck that Nikola is going to make. What do you know about it?
I'm going to say I don't know too much about it right now. I know it's supposed to have a range of over 300 miles. It's probably going to be more expensive than the Tesla Semi, but I don't know the price point because things are kind of fluid sometimes, and they seem to change a lot. But the factory itself, they're now outfitting the factory with the manufacturing equipment that they need to build the truck. The first phase of the factory, which was pretty much the smallest part of the factory, it's about 275,000 square foot, which for a factory is pretty small, is being outfitted with that equipment. That's going in probably as we speak. We saw the equipment yesterday. We've seen it last week. It's piling up and they're bringing it inside. So from there, they're going to start rolling out their BEVs. And I think they're looking at getting 50 produced this year. And it's going to be hand built. They're going to put they're using Iveco trucks. So they're going to take the cab, put it on a chassis. They're modifying the chassis to put the batteries in there. They've made a test track at the site. It's not very long. It's about 1,000 feet, but it's enough to test out the vehicles.
What do you mean by a Iveco truck? So I think what you're saying is they're kind of following the Tesla original Roadster strategy of taking an existing vehicle and modifying it for an electric drivetrain.
Yeah, like the Lotus. Yes. That's pretty much what they're doing. But it's like the cabin chassis, and Iveco which is an Italian company that makes trucks, has made Nikola a specialized cab. It's a little bit different than their regular ones, and Nikola is now adapting that to a frame that's able to hold the batteries and all the equipment that you would need to run the batteries and charge them and things like that.
Okay. So, so you think they're going to make 50? They're going to make 50 a year, or they're going to make 50 in the first year?
I think the number was 50 the first year.
Okay.
It's not a lot. Yeah. It's hand built.
Yeah.
Then I believe also that they're going to be starting on their next phase of construction, probably within the next month. And from there, the factory is going to expand further east. If you look at the videos, it's hard to see how big this site actually is. It's 430 acres. So it's a large site. 275,000 square foot is, roughly 8 acres.
So they got a lot of room.
They got a lot of room. Okay. They also have one other building, which is going to be their battery storage building, which needs to be separate from the rest in case of accidents. They're also going to expand on that building.
Okay. So, and have they started like the grading for the next buildings, or what are you seeing them doing in your flyovers?
The grading is all. I'm not 100% sure, but they've got a section where the next part of the building is going that has already been graded. They've used it for storage area for quite a while. It's been raised up, so that grading may actually be done already. So they may just be able to go right in and start digging out footers, and that's the next thing that we would see. They're also going to add other sections to the site. I forget off the top of my head, but they've got other buildings that are going to be part of their next phase. But the most important part is expanding the factory east and adding more square footage. I don't know the exact square footage that they're adding in the next phase, but I'm probably going to say it's going to be 150 to 200,000. The entire site, when it's done, is supposed to be over 1 million square foot of building space, with the capabilities of putting out 35,000 vehicles a year. that's at full capacity when it's fully built out. And
That's 35,000 of the battery electric truck.
It's probably a mix of both.
What's the second vehicle? I'm sorry if I missed it.
It's going to be the hydrogen.
Okay.
The Tray 2 is going to be I believe it's a Tray 2, and it's going to be the fuel cell electric vehicle.
Okay. And there are still people who believe, because Elon calls it fuel cell, and there's a lot of people who say that hydrogen won't work. But I have seen, I think even Sandy Monroe has said that there's potential for hydrogen fuel cells in some applications.
Yes, he's mentioned that's probably the only place that he thinks that on just ground transportation. I mean, semi trucks for the long haul, hydrogen is going to work out better than batteries. He also thinks, I think VTOL and airplanes probably could benefit from hydrogen. I think shipping containers also, ships that ship
containers.
Ships. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, actually, I've looked at. I was thinking about doing a video about, because Elon has talked about going to battery electric for ships, for container ships and the like. And I did my own math on the volume that batteries would take up in a container ship versus how much volume a diesel fuel takes up. And it's easily 5 times the volume. So you would lose a lot of cargoes. Not even talking about mass, which I don't know enough about how mass plays a role in shipping, but I was almost thinking, well, could you do structural battery for a ship? could you make batteries the hull?
Well,
I don't know.
They are double hulled.
Right. So could you, but they're double hulled for a reason.
Yeah.
The double hull is to make sure that you don't, if you get hit something, that there's some, but I think that's also to protect from a petroleum leak. If you don't have any petroleum although maybe you don't want a battery leak either. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to hit a battery; they'll catch on fire and they'll keep going.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess if you had iron phosphate in the batteries, that leaking into the ocean would not be a problem. Well, iron and phosphate.
Try and picture this. They're trying to make the castings on the Teslas just the battery itself, and if they can make something that the bottom of your car, which is a structural part of the car, is all battery. Why can't you do that with a wall?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I'm surrounded right here by wooden walls. They're all 2x6 walls, and instead of made out of wood, why not a casting that's a giant power wall?
Yep.
That's a way to save space. Wire it all together, and you haven't lost any space.
When you build a house, why don't you build it partly with a wall of batteries, and then your battery pack is your wall of your house? I think it's more important for the vehicle. Structural pack saves weight and weight, and like with your house, the weight of the house doesn't matter as much. With your house isn't doing high speed maneuvers. So, all right. So I don't know the financials behind Nikola Motors at this point. Do you know what their market cap is, or how selling 20,000 vehicles or 50,000 vehicles, or how many they're going to make? How does that work out in terms of numbers for the future prospect? Because I think it's trading around $15 a share, and a SPAC normally trades at $10 a share, so it's been valued at $5 a share more than what the SPAC is worth. In other words, the SPAC comes in, they raise money for investors, and they value the shares at $10 a share based on the amount that was invested in the SPAC. When they merge with Nikola Motors, it assumes what this is effectively saying is Nikola Motors is increasing the value of the company by 50% over the cash that was in the SPAC. So do you think that the plans for the vehicles they're going to produce add up to enough to justify the 50% increase in value that there's? I mean, I guess I would say it a different way, because I'm critical. Like, I think Tesla is going to produce the Semi. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take a step back. Sorry, I'm discombobulated. I'm not a good interviewer. You mentioned before that you think competition is good. And so Lucid would be good competition for Tesla, or Nikola could potentially be good competition for Tesla Semi. I think the competition has always been there. The competition is internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yes.
They're 98% of the market, 99% probably in terms of Semi or more. And your comment about the vehicles haven't improved much. So I drive a 2018 Volkswagen Passat with a 4-cylinder engine that is derivative of the 4-cylinder engine that was in my 2002 Audi A4. It's better. even with all the environmental, it gets much better gas mileage. I probably got 30 miles a gallon on the highway in my Audi. I could get more if I pushed it. And that was with the stick shift, by the way. But I routinely get over 40 miles a gallon on the highway on my Passat. And it's bigger too. It's a longer vehicle. It doesn't have the four-wheel drive, so that probably, helps with gas mileage to not have the four-wheel drive. But I do think that they've improved. But still, to me, the gap between a Tesla Model 3 and my Volkswagen Passat is pretty large. The Tesla Model 3 is much better.
Yeah, when I say they haven't improved, I'm talking about big jumps in technology.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. There is a big difference between the Model 3 and your Volkswagen. But every year they increase the gas mileage by this, and they cheat a little bit, and they change the Volkswagen with their thing. There hasn't been a great big advance in the technology of cars until the electric vehicles.
Right. Okay. So there's been improvements, but like there were incremental improvements where now we have a step change.
Yes.
With EVs, and EVs still have a long way to go. So we're seeing larger innovations with EVs, like going to structural battery pack is a big innovation. Improving battery chemistry is going to end up being a big innovation. And these, like the Model 3 and Model Y, are already better than internal combustion engine vehicles. And now we're going to add to that structural battery pack and better battery chemistries, and who knows what else is coming, right? And then self-driving cars is another thing. There's a lot of it. And then like the Boring Company tunnels really only work if you don't have vehicles that are emitting fumes.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot harder to make a tunnel system work if you have to ventilate it more for the fumes.
That's true.
So, all right. So you see Nikola Motors, have they made projections of what their revenue is going to be in 2022 or 2023? Have they given any hint of where they're going financially?
You know what? I probably wouldn't be qualified to answer that. I don't know their numbers off the top of my head. I'm probably doing this more on faith, besides just a hobby and earning a little bit of revenue from YouTube. Whether or not they succeed or fail is definitely in their hands right now. Whether or not they run out of cash before they're able to start producing trucks and have to ask for more money, that's obviously going to be a problem if they have to do that. How much cash on hand they have, I honestly don't know right now. I know it's less than $1 billion, but they've got a lot still left to build.
Is part of it that they've located near you, that they're like a boon to the local economy? Because you mentioned Electromechanica, which is near you.
Yes.
Lucid Motors and Nikola are each less than 50 miles from you.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking near Tucson, Phoenix, or something else?
It's between Tucson and Phoenix, but it's closer to Phoenix. We're 45 minutes away from probably downtown Phoenix.
Okay, so one of my questions was, when Elon decided to locate a new factory, both Berlin and Texas, and I think also Shanghai, one of his goals was to locate his factory in a place where people want to be. He's going to hire a bunch of young engineers primarily who are going to be working their asses off, and they're going to want to enjoy their free time. And the theory is that Berlin is a great place to be when you're not working.
Okay.
When you're off work, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Berlin.
Austin,
there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Austin. I have a generally positive impression of Phoenix and Tucson, but so are Nikola and Lucid both closer to Phoenix?
Lucid's a little bit closer.
Okay, but they're both closer to Phoenix than Tucson.
Oh yeah, they're much closer.
Okay, so my general sense is that Phoenix is a fun place to live.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of fun stuff to do. There's a basketball team that's actually pretty good right now.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad place to start a business if you want to bring in young engineers and let them have fun in the community when they're not working their asses off.
Yes. There's a lot of the suburbs outside of Phoenix and in our East Valley is Chandler, Gilbert, Queen Creek, and it's a high income area. Not West Palm Beach, not Boca stuff, but it's still there's a lot of people, a lot of engineers. We've got Intel in town. We've had Motorola for 100 years, actually, maybe. So there's a lot of electrical engineer type of people. the fabs and stuff like that, and a lot of people work there, and
Okay.
they're decent sized cities.
Yeah, and Arizona has some good universities. University of Arizona,
Yes.
a lot of high end people there. Okay, so it is if you were picking up, and Casa Grande is where the Lucid Motors location is. Is that? And I just wanted to just say there's a lot of poverty in Palm Beach County, by the way. There's a lot of wealth.
Yes.
But there's also a lot of poverty here. There's a really large. I don't want to say there are some communities that are much poorer than there are wealthy communities. There are some stunningly wealthy communities. I personally know 2 billionaires. So not that I hang out with them on a regular basis, but where I'm from upstate New York. I didn't know any billionaires when I lived in upstate New York.
Do they buy you coffee, or do you have to buy your own when you see them?
They treat.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's rare. I met them. I've met them a couple times. Whatever. Not like we're hanging, but yes, they do buy when you hang with them. So I want to go back to Lucid Motors. So because I don't know enough about Nikola to really ask the hard questions, but the hard question I would say
if you did, you would ask a lot more questions. There's a lot behind Nikola.
So with Lucid Motors, I had this conversation with Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci, and I'm going to have this conversation with you now. They initially said we're going to make 6,000 vehicles in 2021, and then they cut it back when they announced the SPAC merger to 577 vehicles, an odd choice. They didn't say 600. They said 577. I thought that was a little odd. They have some very specific numbers for their projections for vehicle production in the next few years. So my agreement, my personal opinion is there's no way they can deliver a car with the specs they promised. There's no way the engineers at Lucid Motors are that much better than Porsche's engineers. Like Porsche, I like the Porsche Taycan. I like the Mustang Mach-E, by the way. The Mustang Mach-E, I think, is a very good car. I think anybody who makes an internal combustion engine vehicle that's better than anybody who makes an EV that's better than comparable ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, is doing a good thing, and we need that. Tesla can't make enough EVs to replace all the ICE vehicles.
Yes.
At least for now. I think if we go down the road, some of my models, yes, they can, but not for several years will Tesla be able to potentially produce that many vehicles. So there's a need for it. Am I cutting into your time? Are you okay?
No, I'm sorry. Since you're going to say that, I'm getting distracted. I'm just going to take care of one thing. There, done.
Okay.
I just had someone show up here to do something, and they were supposed to show up later.
Okay.
And anyway, go ahead.
We're good. So, think about it. Basically, they're saying they're going to make something that's comparable to a Porsche Taycan, but more luxurious and 2.5 times the EPA rated range. I find that I think more of Porsche's engineers than that. I don't think it's so much of the Lucid engineers to say that they're better than Tesla. But so let's take a step back from that. Let's assume I'm correct, and they're not really going to deliver everything they promised. What I agreed with Ricky was if they deliver 100, I don't think my theory is they're not going to deliver a single car this year. I don't think they can deliver a car because they can't come close to the specs they made. But if they delivered 100 cars this year, and their cars were roughly what we see in the prototypes, and they have 450 miles of range, forget the 517 miles of range, I would concede at that point that they're at least for real, that they've moved past the fraud status to, hey, there's actually something here.
Yeah.
Do those numbers seem fair? Like they don't have to deliver 500 miles of range to really be real, right?
It doesn't have to, but it is what they promised. So there's going to be some consequences to that. But you mentioned something that about the Porsche technicians and
engineers.
Yeah. So you've got these companies like Porsche that have Ford. Ford had a 2015 Ford Focus, electric Ford Focus. Okay. At the same time, Tesla has Model S's coming out with range 250, 300. I'm not exactly sure. A friend of mine had this car, this Ford Focus EV, had 100 miles of range. You talk about the engineers at Porsche, and like they got to be something that's great because they're at Porsche. Yes, they do. But why are all the other companies so far behind a startup known as Tesla, it blows my mind. I don't understand that. So is it possible that Lucid maybe can pull something out of the hat? Because before Tesla, nobody at Ford thought you could have an electric car. Nobody at Chevy, GM killed the electric car. I drove one of those Evo things 20 years ago, and it was
EV1?
fast. Yeah, the EV1. I drove one when I worked for Motorola. They brought a couple by with. They had us drive it, and I was like, I hit the accelerator. I took off. It was like driving a Tesla now. But how did the ICE people fall so far behind companies like Tesla? So maybe there is something that Lucid could pull out of the hat and get that 500-mile range, because you've got a group of engineers, and maybe it's the politics of a large corporation,
Right,
that is going to prevent something like that.
so I guess my question for you is, what would, because this was my agreement with Ricky, was if they fail to deliver 100 vehicles in 2021, or they deliver vehicles that don't have 450 miles of range, Ricky would concede, okay, this company isn't really for real. They dramatically under-delivered. Do you have a threshold, like in your mind, like where, if they don't make this target, it's time for me to give up? Or are you just sort of like holding out hope they're going to make it, and you're going to give them a lot more leash than that?
I'm going to probably just hold on for dear life. I don't have a lot of money invested in it. As long as they're still building the building, we can make flyovers and people are going to be interested. So we're going to keep our viewers happy. But if it turns out like if Nikola needs more money and they can't get it, it's going to be a problem, and they may not be able to continue, and we won't see phase two. We've got Lucid. If they can't produce these cars, well, they're going to have the $4 billion after the merger. But I still think that they're going to continue to move ahead with Project Gravity. I'll have something to film. Will I want to stay an investor? Well, at that point, if they can't produce any cars this year, the value of the stock may just, go down.
Well, but I felt that way about Nikola, and it's still trading at $15 a share. And everybody thinks Nikola is a joke, and it's still trading at $15 a share. I'm not convinced that Lucid Motors stock will tank just because let's suppose they say, you know what? I mean, honestly, what Peter Rawlinson said when they did the SPAC merger, and he said, we're not going to produce 6,000, we're going to produce 577. He said, well, I talked with Alan Mullally. Alan Mullally drove the car, and he said, well, get the car right first. Like, well, wait a minute. You've been telling us all along how great the car is. Now the car is not. And this is actually one of my big criticisms of automotive journalists is, by and large, they didn't ask the right questions. Right?
What journalist does?
Well, no, but some journalists do. I think some journalists do ask, not very many, but some journalists do ask the right questions. But, the question should have been, well, when did Alan Mullally drive the car? Right? Because if he drove the car before the last time you appeared on Fox News talking about how great the car was, when you knew it wasn't, and you knew you weren't going to produce 6,000 cars, that's fraud. And I think they're going to get sued, and I think the lawyers are going to find out the answer to that question, if he even drove the car at all. But what wasn't right about the car, right? Because you've been telling us all along how great the car is. Nobody asked him, well, what's left to be done? Why isn't the car right? And I think the pitch has been, well, we've got to get generally speaking, the pitch has been, we've got to get the manufacturing process down. But I think the car isn't right yet either.
Oh, it's possible. It's still a prototype. If the car was right, they could probably put out the 577 cars. But I don't try to read into things too much. If they said get the car right, he may just be like, well, let's get it finished. It could be anything. People talk in different ways. And I say one thing and my wife says, what did you say? I was like, well, I didn't say anything. Things can be misinterpreted. If it just says get the car right, they may be working on software. They could be working on paint. I know paint's a big thing for them, but it may not mean as much as you want, being a Lucid hater.
Well, no, I like I said, I want them to succeed because I think it's good for society if they succeed. I have a personal pride thing that I've called them a fraud, so I will feel. But I've admitted, I've accepted. Look, if they deliver 100 cars, they get 450 miles of range. I admit I was wrong. Right? If they deliver 500 cars this year with 500 plus miles of range, I will kiss Peter Rawlinson's feet.
I don't know if he'll let you.
No, he probably wouldn't. But I mean, I'm making that offer. I will bow down, praise him as a genius, whatever it is. I will admit I was wrong. Even if they deliver 100 cars with 450 miles range, I will admit I was wrong. That it's not a fraud. That it's for real. And I want them.
I think you might have to. I think if that's where you're setting the bar now, it's would you say 100 cars at
100 cars, 450 miles of range.
Yeah, I think you're going to be kissing someone's feet.
No. The kissing the feet is the 500 cars and the 500 miles of range.
All right.
But that I will admit I was wrong about them. Just that simple thing that I'll admit that I was wrong and that they're not a fraud. 100 cars, 450 miles of range. I'll admit I was wrong.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's very man of you.
And I want, from an intellectual perspective, from a societal perspective, I want to be wrong. I want there to be more EVs. It's not going to hurt Tesla. It's not going to hurt my investments, right? So anyway, nothing else is coming to my mind. Let me just see. I'm going to ask the chat. This is why I keep looking off to the side. If anybody in the chat has a question for Barry from Bear's Workshop, or a comment about, there's a lot of people making fun of Lucid Motors as flaccid motors. People are making fun of Nikola. There were some people who were, it's more like people slamming Tesla or slamming Lucid rather than questions. Or I see a lot of people. I'm not saying that people aren't making intelligent comments, but yeah, Damian White says a 400-mile Lucid EV would draw more large long-term investors. Yeah, I think if they even did I think they got to deliver 450 to be credible. Like, I don't mind if they don't make 500. If they do 450, I think that's still credible. But even 400 miles would be something, right?
It's definitely an accomplishment. The only problem is it's not what was promised, and that's where it gets a little tricky. I mean, you might say, "Hey, I was wrong," but still, there's going to be people upset that that's not what it's promised. And being the price of that car, it really to me it needs to be 500 for them to carry on and people being willing to spend that type of money.
Okay, so I still don't see any questions to address. Well, actually,
I'm looking through your chat too. Also,
there's another comment earlier about that Porsche and the OEMs can't do what Tesla's doing and maybe what Lucid's doing because they get so much from suppliers. They have a lot of constraints. They get a lot from suppliers. They have the dealership model problem. They have union labor constraints. So there's an argument that Lucid has advantages because of that, because they don't have those constraints. Do you have the sense that Lucid is doing a lot in-house? Can you tell how much is being done by suppliers versus how much is being done by Lucid?
I can't. I haven't seen a lot of trucks coming in and or out, dropping off parts that may be manufactured elsewhere. But if they're not manufactured elsewhere, somebody or something still has to drop off raw materials. So we haven't seen a lot of activity. We haven't been there a whole lot. We've been there for 4 visits. 2 of them were on the weekend. So whether or not they're getting parts from other places, other suppliers, we just haven't seen them coming in.
Okay. So I like this question from Joey's cleaning lady. I also like the name of, I'm guessing that's Joey's mom, Joey's cleaning lady. Which company is more real, Nikola or Lucid? Which one do you believe in more?
You're going to get somebody mad at me at one of those companies.
Well, which are you more excited about? How about that?
Well, definitely Lucid. I still think Nikola is going to produce a truck, but I'm never going to buy one of those trucks. The Lucid car, hey, you know what? There's some style there. If it exists, if it comes out, it's going to be a beautiful car. People are going to buy it. Maybe not in the numbers that they have projected, because I don't see how. But I would be more excited about seeing a Lucid going down the street than a Nikola Semi, which I'll probably never see because they'll be in other places than my hometown.
Okay, and then Chris Heath is asking the question: is there actually a building on the factory field? I think that's a well, first of all, for both Nikola and Lucid, your flyovers, you can go to Bear's Workshop channel. There's a link in the description below. There are 2 buildings on the Lucid work site, and there's 1 building on the Nikola work site, and there is some progress in expanding the 1 building on the Nikola site.
There's 2 buildings at the Nikola site. One is like 17,000 square foot. That's their battery building. battery packing building, and the rest is for manufacturing, which is about 275,000 square foot. They also have a water campus going in where they putting in a lot of water equipment, a small water tower. It's supposed to hold like 360,000 gallons, which not really small. Plus, they've done a lot of paving work. They've got their docks. All of that's already put in. At Lucid, they have the two main buildings, and they've got some other structures around the place. They've got a test track. The two buildings at Lucid are very large. I don't know the square footage off the top of my head, but they're decent sized buildings and definitely big enough to produce one vehicle on a small scale.
Okay, so
Not that I'm an auto expert, I'm not an auto manufacturing expert.
So here's another question I like. I'm gonna phrase the question a little differently. If someone were to give you a Lucid Air that you have to keep it, you can't sell it. Someone's going to give you a Lucid Air or a Model S Plaid, and you had to choose one of them. Which one would you choose to have?
I'm going to defer back to what you said. I need to drive it first.
Okay.
If
Fair
I
enough.
can't, if I haven't driven a Lucid Air, and I haven't driven a Model S either, so maybe in time, but I would have to drive both.
Okay.
But as far as bells and whistles, that's what the Lucid Air has, all the bells and whistles and all the touch screens, like the Mercedes just has the S Class. And
did you watch the EQS reveal?
Yeah, I did.
What did you think about that in comparison to, for those who don't know, Mercedes has announced an electric vehicle sort of in the vein of the Mercedes S Class, which I think is about 10 to 12 inches longer than the Lucid Air and also longer than the Model S. I think the same luxury market that Lucid Air is going for. What did you think about the Mercedes EQS in comparison to the Lucid Air?
Inside, that car was beautiful. It was decked out. I thought it was an awesome looking vehicle. I'd love to sit in that and ride around in something like that. I'm sure it's a good ride also. I think the outside is
it looks like a Honda Accord.
It makes me swallow vomit. It's like
I've heard people say it looks like a Honda Accord.
It does, but worse. I mean, a Honda Accord is just, it's just a plain car. Is not nothing that exciting about it. But there's something that I look at that Mercedes, and I'm just like, it's just like, what? Well, first, like, what is that? Then you look at it, and then you're like, oh wow, not my vision of style. And there may be plenty of people that like it, but it's not my vision. Inside, it looks awesome.
Okay. All right. So I probably need to get going. I think we've pretty much exhausted the conversation. I really enjoyed this. For those who are watching, Bear's Workshop is a YouTube channel. There's a link in the description below. He does flyovers of Nikola Motors factory site and Lucid Motors factory site. If you go to his videos, he has a Patreon account. You can support him on Patreon. Of course, I would like it if you went to my Patreon and joined my Patreon. I sell merchandise like this Elon Time t-shirt and this Elon stainless steel water bottle. There's links to that in the description below as well. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Barry, before we wrap up? I
just want to thank you for inviting me on and having this conversation. I hope it went as well as you hoped it would.
Yeah.
I invite everyone to take a look at my channel, subscribe, check out the Patreon account if you really want to, and donate some money. No,
and be clear, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more activity, particularly on the Lucid job site. And your flyovers are going to show a lot of that. It's already showing something, but we're going to see a lot more soon. Yeah,
I think for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be like, oh, did anything change? And you're going to have to look at the parking lot to see where the cars moved from to see a difference. But in the next couple of weeks, things will start looking different, and hopefully we can get with Lucid and find some middle ground as far as being safe and protecting their intellectual property.
Okay. All right. So Barry, thank you very much for coming on the channel. I really enjoyed this. Maybe we'll do a follow-up in a few months after they've actually built, after we see some real progress building things.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. So
Thanks for having me on.
I'm going to end the stream on YouTube, and then I'll say goodbye to you after we're done with that.
Okay.
So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. So we're off.